Hello, everyone. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov says that he's prepared to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And my question is why? Not why he's saying that, but what would be the point of their meeting? Here are the items on the potential agenda. Lavrov says there is no legal way to take Russia's assets. You know what? It is so important for a person to educate themselves at any age, at any point in their career. I think just for fun and to do Lavrov a huge favor of educating them, the European countries where Russia's assets are frozen should show him otherwise. Just saying. Next, U.S. is considering Putin's nuclear deal proposal. This is not exactly a deal. This is going back to the status quo as it was before Putin yelled from the rooftop that he started testing nuclear weapons again. And in that light, my question is, what would be the point of making a deal with him if he's just going to break it again? Trust me, he's going to find an excuse to do so. So I don't see the point of wasting anybody's time. I have no great love for Marco Rubio, but I wouldn't even waste his time on this. Russian-Ukraine proposal. It's the same thing. Again, he just wants Ukraine to surrender. Again, why is this even being discussed without Ukraine? What business does Lavrov have discussing the fate of Ukraine with Rubio without the presence of anybody in Ukraine? Especially since, it's a no-go. Russia will not give up regions in control. We'll see. We'll see. Here's the thing, and here's why I say that. I understand the situation in Ukraine right now. Trust me, I watch this thing all the fucking time. And it is very possible that the longer Russia is holding on to the territory that they are occupying right now, the more expensive it's going to become for them to hold on to it. The example being Crimea. So remember in March of 2014 when they barged into Crimea and they celebrated Crimea is ours, great. Well, right now, nobody can live in Crimea. Russia has turned it into a military base, and it's not a very good one. Crimea used to be, under the Soviet Union, used to be the stronghold of what used to be the Soviet Black Sea Fleet, and which later became Russia Black Sea Fleet. You won't see any Black Sea Fleet over there right now because Ukraine had drowned a bunch of it, and the rest had retreated to the Russian territory. And because Russia insisted on turning Crimea into a military base, it became fair game from the Ukrainian standpoint. So, Ukraine has been firing at the infrastructure there. Ukraine has been firing at the control centers there, at any weapon storages, etc., etc. So, at this time, Crimea is showing us what could happen to other Ukrainian territories. Basically, it's becoming too hot to hold. And the same is happening in the border regions of Russia. So we've heard about Russia striking Ukrainian infrastructure. We're going to talk about this in a minute. But Ukraine has returned the strike and disrupted power and heating in two major cities in Russia. The cities in question are border cities. This is where Associated Press needs to be a bit more specific. And again, it was Russia's choice to A, start the war in Ukraine, B, turn their border cities, those border regions, into basically gigantic military bases, and C, not mandate evacuation from those areas, which they absolutely should have done. So again, those regions became fair game. These are the regions from which long-range missiles are fired. These are the regions where military airplanes take off and then drop the glide bombs. These are the areas from which the drones are launched. These are the areas from which the troops are launched. So again, they are now legit military targets, and that is why these cities had lost their electricity and heat. And this still continues. Unlike Ukraine, who continues targeting only the areas where Russian troops or military equipment is concentrated, or both. Russia is just bombing indiscriminately. Now, I did get a chance to speak to my parents today, and they're alive, they're okay. There's a lot of shit flying through the Zaporizhia region on the way to Dnipropetrovsk or even Kiev. So they hear it pretty much all the time, and their alarms are going off pretty much all the time. But again, Kiev, for example, is not a pre-front region. Kiev is not being used as a military base, but it gets bombed. Dnipropetrovsk is not, it gets bombed. Zaporizhia region, that's more complicated because it is very close to the front lines. Although, again, the logic there is not to put any military targets near it to protect the city. And it gets bombed. Kherson, Kharkiv, Vinnytsia, Poltava, all of those areas are not military targets, and they get bombed. Not only do these places get bombed, but again, civilians get killed. And once again, this is just the stuff that gets reported. This has become so common, it doesn't even get brought up. So this is the latest. 3 people were killed and 18 were injured in the Donetsk and Kherson region. And I asked my parents specifically about Kherson. Basically, Kherson, like Zaporizhia, is split in half by the river. And the Russians were able to take one half, but they can't cross the river. So they're basically demolishing the side of the city that they cannot take out of spite. And here's another thing that's a good indication of the difference between the two sides. So in the Donetsk region, despite the fact that the separatists there were the ones who invited Russia's militants into the region back in 2014, it is Ukrainian government and Ukrainian military that is now working to evacuate people from there, get them out of harm's way, because they are smack dab in the fighting zone and they shouldn't be there. That is the difference. In Russia, people who live in Kursk and Belgorod and Voronezh, Putin basically said, that's your problem. It's a local problem. It's up to the local government. But here, 137 people. Doesn't seem like that many. But no, somebody went and got them. Somebody went and got them out of there. That, by the way, also puts another nail into the coffin of Russia's myth that Ukrainians hate Russian speakers, particularly those living in the Donetsk region. If that were the case, why would the Ukrainian government risk lives of others to go and get those 137 people? Yeah, that. More to come.